Everybody get up.
It's time to jam now.
We got a real jam going down.
Welcome to the Space Jam.
Here's the podcast.
Today, joined with Tanner Olson, who is a friend and mentor of mine. Tanner, how's it going?
Everybody get up. Wait, did we already do it? Did we do the open?
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, how is it going? I mean, how are things in the old Tennessee?
Dude, Nashville's great. We've been here for about 6 months now. I think 6 months. We moved here in August of 2019, and it's been a lot of fun. I've been in and out of the state, traveling around and doing things. But while I'm here, it's been good. And I think like this might be the longest stretch that I'll be here, which is about three and a half weeks, where I'll be here straight.
Oh, nice.
without having to leave. So yeah, man. I always tell people, like, I think Nashville is one of the perfect place to live. You get all 4 seasons. It's an eclectic culture. You have people from all walks of life here. It feels, I don't know if I'm not allowed to say it, but it feels a lot like heaven, even though I haven't been there yet.
So, like, you guys get snow in Nashville?
Dude, it snowed a little bit this morning.
Oh, wow.
We're recording this on Valentine's Day, so, and I'll be honest, I wouldn't want to spend this day with anyone else but you.
The people listening, right? Yeah.
Yes.
No.
But I've been doing work at the kitchen table this morning. And I looked outside and there was like white flakes falling from the sky. And my first thought wasn't snow. It was like, oh man, something's on fire. And that's just ashes. Because it's sunny and the sky is blue. And I'm like, oh, there's no way it's that. Why are you doing? And there's like birds. And I've never seen birds when it snows. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't put the two together. So yeah, it snows here. Not a lot. Like, it's not like
interesting.
The world doesn't shut down.
Right.
But yeah.
Interesting. When you said it gets all the seasons, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I just thought Nashville was warm and then slightly cooler and then warm again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's true. That's pretty true. If you're like from Wisconsin, because like, have you ever been to a place where there's like snow on the ground? And you're not like in Wisconsin and you're like, and someone's like, oh yeah, it snowed. And you're like, no, it didn't. And there's clearly snow on the ground, but you're like, that's not real snow. And they're like, well, technically that's snow. But you're like, no, it's not real snow. So down, like when it snows down here, like we've had friends visit from the north and I'm like, yeah, it's snowing. And they're like, that's not snow. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like it looks just like it. It's snow. And they're like, that's not real snow. Well, okay. Sorry. Anyways, here's a poem.
Sorry. Yeah. Let's share about how we met because, I mean, it's not necessarily the most interesting story, but it is an interesting place.
Yeah.
The very first time we met, I have the memory of an elephant, which apparently is very good. And it was, I interviewed for a job of which you were the man in charge at Camp Luther to be a counselor, and you were the program director at the time. And I remember, like, I was there, and I was actually just enjoying the winter activities. And then Shelly Carlos was like, hey, why don't you just do your interview now? And I was wearing some sweatpants. And so I think I borrowed John Carolos's khakis and had a Packer sweatshirt on. And the first thing I was like, man, I'm so sorry that I'm underdressed. And you were just like, brother, I'm wearing sweatpants.
I was. It was cold. Well,
yes,
because you were there in the winter, and so if it was the winter, that means that I was for sure depressed, which means I wasn't putting on real pants. So I joke about that, but it's true. But here's what I remember about that interview. You walked into my office, and we hadn't met before, and I think you were one of the first people that I ever like interviewed for a job because I was like 24, 25. I was young, and you sat there, and either I got the impression that you were really nervous, you didn't like me, or you were just kind of just there, like didn't really care at all. Just like,
it was definitely the first one. But
I was like, man, I like this guy. Can't read him, but I like this guy.
That is something that I have gotten told a lot, that people cannot read me. Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
It depends on what job you're in. Like if you're like a cop, I feel like that's a really good thing. But I don't know. if you're like a motivational
In
speaker
my
who'll be
job.
like, no, I don't feel really motivated. He doesn't look motivated. I don't know if he's believing what he's saying.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about because people have told me that since I've been at my job now, and I don't know if that's a good thing. Working with families and children and youth.
You just got to get a shirt that says, I'm honestly, I'm happy to be here. Like, I guess this is where I want to, my face lies, but I will tell you,
Yeah.
yeah. But
My face lies.
it was a good interview for like, I think, I don't know how many job interviews you had before that, but you were one of the first people that I interviewed for a job. So I was like, I had like ideas in my mind as to what I would ask, but it was very like, we'll see if this question works. And if it did, you did great. If it didn't work, whatever, you still got the job.
I think that it was my first real interview. Like I had jobs in college
Yeah.
up to that point, but like those are a little different than having to like go somewhere and do an interview and all that. Like I worked in the admissions office at
Hmm.
school, so but I do remember being very nervous. But then it was easy to just get relaxed, and maybe that's why my face was so angry and it was hard to get a read because I do have a little bit of RBF when I get
Yeah,
relaxed.
a little bit.
Uh, but yeah, you had to hire me anyways because I was a guy and they need male counselors. So
Well, that was my other thought. I was like, this guy knows he has the job. He clearly knows that we camps struggle to get male counselors. You could have been like, I don't really like kids. Do you tolerate them? Yeah, well, you're hired. Like
right.
now I wouldn't have hired you if you said that, for the record. But
Mhm.
still, I would have hired you. But no, you earned the job. Yeah, I'm not just saying that. You were a great counselor. It was fun to watch you be a counselor and grow over those couple of years. And
Mhm.
do you remember? I think it was it your second year as a counselor? We like made this arts and crafts project of a sheep, and then you and I would hide it all year.
Yes.
Do you
That
remember
was
that?
that was the same summer when
Oh,
I
it
would
was.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I remember one time you hit it and like I couldn't find it for days.
Oh yeah.
And then like we were at the flagpole and you were just like, "You ever find that sheep?" And I was like, "No, did you just throw it away?" And you just like slowly looked up to the lodge and it was in which I was not allowed to go in as a counselor. And it was in someone's window.
Yep.
Oh.
That was fun. I still have that sheep, by the way.
Oh,
I
very
have it
nice. Thank you.
somewhere. I've been meaning to mail it to you, but then but then you would find it right away.
That is Valentine's right there. That is
Yes.
heartwarming.
Here we are.
At Camp Luther, personally, I grew a lot, and I think a lot of that was, especially that first summer, from your leadership. Like I came into that summer being very, like, it was hard to read me intentionally, I guess, because I didn't want people to know. I don't know why, but I didn't want people to know a lot about me, and I think the whole like, not just yourself, but definitely yourself and the rest of the staff was just like, no, like you have to be open to work with people and
Yeah.
be honest about it, and that was eye opening for me because I had been honest with my closest friends,
Hmm.
some of which worked at camp and some of which I made at camp, but I'd never done that with just like anyone, like
Right.
kids that come to camp or other adults and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a scary thing to put yourself out there and to let people see you and to actually know you. And to say like, well, this is who I am as a human being. It's a terrifying thing, especially when you
Hmm.
haven't done it before, and especially when you're doing it with new people in a place that you're going to be for the next 12 weeks.
Right, and that was my mentality too, is because I struggle with being irritated, maybe too fast.
Hmm.
Um, but like I went into that summer and I was like, look, like I'm gonna be with people for 12 weeks, and there will be people that will irritate me, but that's just the way it is. So I'm gonna get to know them, and
Hmm.
maybe that helped too. I mean,
Yeah.
barriers were definitely broke for me, where I spoke freely for the first time when it wasn't just my friends in a while, which was nice.
Yeah. It's camp is a pretty well, it bursts almost every bubble that you have,
Hmm.
whether in a good way or a bad way. But you lose your personal space, you lose kind of the routines that you have set in place entering into the summer, and then it's like, well, you have to like talk and be
Hmm.
on, and people see you at your best and at your worst, and it's a it's a process that just breaks you down and really reveals, oh, this is who I am as a human being. And then through it all, it's like, oh, people still like me. Well, most people still like me. Yeah, well, at least he likes me.
So that summer, you and me and John Carolus were in so at Camp Luther, they do a variety show, which is maybe not exclusive to just Camp Luther, maybe other camps do, but it's basically like you can put on skits or do a talent or play the guitar or something. And John and I were two male cheerleaders, and then you would come on, and we'd basically be three male cheerleaders.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And do chants and yell, and I would throw a chair, or I did it once, and I remember that was probably like, there are a few moments in my camp experience where I was scared, and that was one of them, because like John and I were pretending to be mad at some kids playing a game, and then you came on and you started pretending to be mad at some kids playing a game. And John and I had chairs. That was the only prop that we had other than ourselves. And I remember I grabbed the prop and threw it over the backdrop of the outdoor chapel at Camp Luther. And the entire crowd like went, and even John like looked at me with a big smile, but his eyes were saying, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you just did that." And I turned around and you were just you were just staring at me, and you were just like, "This is done." But then you let us keep doing it as long as I didn't throw any more chairs.
Oh man, it's all slowly coming back to me. That was I didn't, and we had like this running joke where it was like, "Don't you throw that chair?
Yep.
No chair, no chair."
And then the last time we did it, the three of us, we all threw a chair over the top. Oh, that was fun. Yeah, good times.
Oh, I miss those skits. I
do too sometimes.
I never thought that I would have a sentence like, "I miss skits."
Mm-hmm.
But I do. That was fun. This is gonna sound weird. In some weird way, that was like therapy for me, because there was just like something very therapeutic about. Well, I mean, you get this because you have this like comedic gene. There's something about making people laugh,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
like it kind of like changes the narrative in your head, or it changes kind of the way that you enter into the rest of the day, or
Yep.
whatever it may be. But when you get a crowd of people laughing at something you did that was intentionally meant to be funny, it's
Right.
it's one of the best things.
And that's something that I still do. Like, I mean, for me, a lot of it is my love language is words of affirmation. And I know that I'm funny at times.
Yeah.
And that's how I can, I guess, replenish myself is, making people laugh. As long as it's intentional. There have definitely been times where it wasn't intentional.
Yeah. Like falling down in front of people when you didn't mean to fall down, and they laugh at you.
Yes.
Like, oh, that wasn't okay. Well, you're laughing at me, not with me, and it hurts.
Right.
Have you ever thought about doing like stand up or trying your hand in it?
So when you were at Concordia, you did, because we both went to Concordia, Wisconsin, not at the same time though, clearly. Because you're a little bit older than me.
Whoa.
How old are you? I'm going to be 25.
What do you mean clearly?
I guess you were my boss, so I mean, there's the clearly.
I'm 30. So
so you're about 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
Did they have Mr. Concordia when you were there?
Did they have Mr. Concordia? Yeah, dude.
So yeah, I won Mr. Concordia when I was there.
No way. Guess who also won Mr. Concordia?
You?
Yeah.
What did you do to win? Like, what was your talent, I guess?
Well, this is going to enter into a transition. So why don't you tell me what you did first, and then you ask me.
So what I did is being funny, and I had already been at Camp Luther.
I went to Camp Luther.
Oh, I had already been at Camp Luther for 2 summers, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that I could make people laugh, and that once people laughed at me, I could feed into that and like be even funnier. So I didn't necessarily do stand-up, but I made my own thank you notes, like Jimmy Fallon does.
Yeah.
And I had my friend who played the piano at my wedding and stuff. He played the thank you note music, and I had a slideshow, and I basically just ripped into the other Concordias, President Ferry, the people like that were influential at Concordia, and the sports teams. And like an entire auditorium. That's the only time in my life where an entire auditorium, I got them to laugh.
That's awesome.
Like, and they were my age. Yeah. So that's what I did. So yeah, I guess I have done stand up, but I've never actually thought of doing it because that's scary. Like even doing this, which we'll get into as we talk about the creative process, is
Yeah.
terrifying to put something out there and put yourself out there.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, what did you do when you won Mr. Concordia? I have an assumption now.
Yeah. So I did a couple of. So I'm trying to remember how it went, but like it was one of those things where you, like you had to get dressed up, and so
Mm-hmm.
I found this like super old 1970s suit that looked like an old couch, and I wore that, and just I looked ridiculous. But everybody else was like super dressed up, and I was like kind of looking like I was trying to get a job in like 1973. Um, so I did that, and then we had to do like questions. They would ask us questions, and we would give
Mm-hmm.
answers. And then my talent, and this is a podcast, so you can't see me doing like the fingers, the rabbit fingers or whatever, air quotes.
Mm-hmm.
I did poetry, and that was one of the first times where I shared poetry in front of a
Like in
crowd.
a front of people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had the summer previous to that. I worked in West Virginia doing mission trips, and I would share a poem every like Wednesday night. It was a poem about Jesus, and that was my first time sharing poetry. But this was my first time sharing like a poem that wasn't religious, and it was just like for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me that I won, and then I was able to pay rent that month. So victory.
When I won, they gave us a bouquet of roses
Wow.
and a $250 check. And so when they asked us questions, like when I did not dress up either. I wore khakis and a sweater,
Hey.
and everyone else tuxedos and like, or like not tuxedos, but like suit coat and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the questions was, Blake, you're the least dressed up person, and they gave me the microphone to answer.
Yeah.
And like this was right around the time or right after Marshawn Lynch had the press conference where he said, "I'm just here so I won't get fined." And I said
Yeah.
into the microphone, I said, "I'm just here for $250." And like, for some reason, just being totally honest, everyone burst out laughing, and I was like, "Oh
Good
yeah, this is
answer.
mine. This
Yeah.
is
Oh
mine."
yeah. Good luck, everybody else. Yeah. If you wanted me to really dress up, you would have said $500.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So you, as Tanner Olson, you,
Hmm.
how would you phrase that? Is it like, are you written to speak? Do you own written to speak? Do you do written to speak?
Yeah, dude,
How
it's
would
such a
you?
I don't, honestly, there are some days where I'm very frustrated with myself for being like, no, I'm going to go by written to speak. And so the backstory of all of it was I wanted to create something. And so I wanted to create something where I could share my work, and that would be like the platform for it. And it was going to originally just be me sharing poetry and writing. And so I picked a name for it. And I picked a name because like there were bands that I had followed where it was like one person, but they went by, Dashboard Confessional or The Almost or The Rocket Summer. And I was like, oh, that's cool to have like a name to hide behind. And so I was like, well, I'll call it Written to Speak. And as it's kind of grown and changed, it's become less the name Written to Speak and more of like, oh, this is Tanner's writing. This is what Tanner
Mhm.
does. Tanner is Written to Speak. And so now, so more these days, Written to Speak is really just my website and my handle. But when I
Sure.
come and visit places, it is Tanner Olson, and I have the business is titled Written to Speak, but like it's all of my creative endeavors and outlets and all that kind of
Yeah. So like nobody's called you like written, or they haven't introduced you on
stuff.
stage as written to speak, like
Yeah,
you're
well,
Nelly or 50 Cent or something like that.
yeah, well, no, I get like I know it's a spam email when it's like dear written. That's not my name. But like when I go places, they'll be like, "This is written to speak," which is still true. It is, but
Hmm.
people don't call me like, "Hey, Mister to speak." It's just like it's like it's just call me Tanner. But if you want to find out what I do on the internet, it's all under the name Written to Speak. And so when you Google that, it's easier to find me than Tanner Olson. So yeah, but the name just kind of has remained and stayed, mostly because like that's where I've kind of put all of my work and the things that I'm
Hmm.
somewhat proud of and other things that I'm not proud of, but like all under the name Written to Speak. And so, yeah.
Well, it's a great name. Like I'll be honest, like written to speak like there's some names that just flow really well, and I think written to speak is one of those. And you can summarize it like
Yeah.
WTS or however, which I think is important when you put yourself out there to have something that is catchy.
Yeah, yeah, and like one of the reasons behind it is like, I mean, you've seen me share poetry before. A lot of the things that I have
Hmm.
written, like, it's not just like rolling off my tongue. Like
Right.
it's a lot of words, and so I do read it, and so a lot of it was written to speak, and like being a writer and being somebody who believes in the power of words, I think that the things that we write are really meant to be spoken. I mean, it kind of goes back to like the letters in the New Testament, right? Like when these letters were like arrived at cities,
Right.
one person would read them. Like these words were written to
Hmm.
speak. And I'm not saying that my words should be in the Bible. That's not what I'm saying. Not at all. But like there is power in words, and there's something powerful about like hearing something that was written. And you hear it differently too, like from the artist or from the person who has taken time to put the words on a piece of paper. And there's something that changes between when you read it and when you hear it. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit more that kind of went into the name Written to Speak.
Written to Speak, now you have a book, you go on tour, and you speak and you do all those things. But when and where did this kind of start, and how has it evolved from that start to now?
So it started about 7 years ago. I graduated from college in 2013, and like we mentioned a little bit earlier, like I written poetry throughout college and shared it a little bit, but it was more of a, oh, I just kind of like do this on the side. It's not like there
Mm-hmm.
was nothing like in the future for me with poetry or with writing. I just knew that it was an outlet that I needed, and so I was working a job, and I was 6 months into my first full time job, and out from underneath me, I just got fired one day randomly. They cut me, and I was like, well, this is the worst thing that's ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it just goes like, well, I guess I'm going to start doing poetry, which, like, naturally, like, wow, you lose a job, you might as well start writing poetry. Which when I told people about it, they're like, well, so I guess you don't believe in money anymore. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so I just started writing. And then in 2013, I released a very angsty, moody, full of feelings album called Honest Thoughts. And it had just a wide range of different kinds of poems on there. And
Mm-hmm.
I released that, and I didn't really know what I was doing. And then over the next couple of years, it was kind of like I would post things every once in a while. Like I created a Facebook page and all this kind of stuff, and I would share a little bit of a few things here. I'd write a blog post here, and oh, maybe I would release like another album. But it was nothing that like I was confident about. It was nothing that I was like extremely passionate about. If anything, it was a place where I was like fighting insecurity publicly and like trying to share things that would hopefully help somebody else, but also I was working through a lot, and I was just trying to do it like that. And so over the next couple of years, Written to Speak was kind of this back burner thing where I would share stuff every once in a while. It was a place where I could work through pride, like I said, insecurities, like who is
Mm-hmm.
God and what does all this mean? What is this whole living thing all about? But like through it, like I knew that I liked writing, I knew I liked poetry, I knew I liked sharing with people, and then every now and again I would write something or share something, and someone would say, hey, like I needed to hear that, or that's what I needed to hear today, or thank you for sharing that. It's these small little compliments and pieces and bits of encouragement that was like, yeah, maybe there's something more here. And then in 2000 and I guess like 15, it's when I was kind of transitioning out of camp and into the next season of life. I decided to take things just a little bit more seriously with Written to Speak. I started writing daily, sharing things daily, and this is kind of when I started like putting more like shorter poems out. And I was just like kind of I pushed all the chips that I had into the center of the table, and just kind of kept going. And then from there, I just every day I wrote. I tried to add something more to my resume as a writer, and to just share my work with new people. And so kind of since my time after camp, like Written to Speak, it just kind of continued to grow and to evolve. And it has, like, honestly, I never thought it would be where it is today, because now this is my full-time job. This
Mm-hmm.
is what I do for a living, and it is scary, and it is difficult, and it is weird, but I can't help but do it because I believe in it too much to stop. So yeah, that's a little bit of kind of how where it started, where it is now. And so now, like kind of like you mentioned, like it is like I have a book out, I go on tour, I do something called Poetry and Stories, where I share a handful of poems and tell a couple of stories, and it's poetry, but it's also a little bit of like stand up comedy,
Mm-hmm.
kind of blended together. So it's a hopeful like hour long show, and then I'll give messages at churches and schools, and so it's a lot of like stepping into people's community and spaces and sharing the words that I have written for them, along with a bunch of other stuff as well that helps pay the bills.
What is the average day? So you said that you write a lot more and you add to your portfolio every day. what
Yeah.
is that? What does an average day look like now when you try to write new things and put new things out there?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on where I'm at and what's going on. Like if I'm on tour, I'm usually just on tour and I don't have time to write. Like I'll be able to put down a couple of ideas, but mostly it's me waking up, driving to a place, setting up, sharing, tearing down, and then if I'm lucky, able to go somewhere else later that day and do it all again. And then, I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way. Like after you give a message or do a devotion at church, like you're pretty much exhausted from it
Hmm.
because it's just like I mean, there's a lot that happens when you speak in front of people and then when you share personal things with a
Right,
room full of it doesn't have to be people you know, it can be strangers as well, just it's
right.
exhausting. And so like if I am home though, the routine that I've tried to create for myself is I'll usually wake up, I'll go to the gym and play basketball for a little while because I know that for the rest of the day I'm probably going to be sitting at a computer writing. And then a lot of that is like I'll spend time working on like daily posts that I'll have coming out over the next couple of days. I put a lot of stuff on Instagram and Facebook, all kind of the internet. And then it's
Hmm.
like, okay, I need to work on some like a blog post or two. I need to add to the next book. I need to reach out to other places to book shows and send out some orders and kind of look ahead and then look behind to kind of learn from what I've done. And then throughout all of that, I have to find time to like read and study and learn from other writers and creatives too. So
Hmm.
this morning it's Valentine's Day. So I did not go to the gym today because it's a holiday and it is cold out. I just don't want, I didn't want to go. And so this morning, like I wrote two new poems. I worked on a couple of prayers for an upcoming project. I did some stuff for my Patreon community and sent out probably more emails than I can count, trying to work together with some other people. So yeah, it is, dude. It is. It's something. Yeah.
And I'm sure being like even just for me doing this, it's not like I try to have it where I just work on this when I have either free time or on Fridays and the occasional Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
And that's hard enough, like to make sure that you're doing things well and all of that and that it's well received. But then to do it every day has to be, I mean, just an absolute grind. I mean, and like you said, like filling out orders and reading, I think that's huge. I mean, that's a hard thing that I've started to do more of now is
Hmm.
reading, but that is like it's not as easy as it sounds to be able to just sit and read for
Right.
part of your job, like for
Hmm.
what you do. That's not as easy as people think it is.
Yeah. No, I mean it is, and like you said, like it. Yes, it is a grind. But when you feel like this is the thing that you're supposed to do, like I'm gonna step into it and try to be faithful to the work that I think that God has called me to do, and I want to take it seriously or as seriously as I can. And honestly, like 3 years ago, I thought that I was giving this everything that I had, and now today I'm like, well, you are hardly doing you are hardly doing anything.
Hmm.
And I wonder what it's going to look like in like 2 years or 3 years. Like maybe I'll still be doing this, or maybe like life will have changed so much and I won't be able to do this full time. But like for now, like I really want to be faithful to what it is that I think God has called me to do. But then at the same time, man, like I've been learning a lot about like rest and how
Hmm.
important that is. And it was rest was or rest or Sabbath or whatever you want to call it. It was kind of described to me as like you're flexing that trust muscle, right? Like trusting that like God can do more in 6 days than you can do in seven.
Mm.
And so it's just like learning that rest is just as important as all the other things are. And it's you have to pace yourself or you get burned out, and you got to
Yep.
like trust like hey, things are going to come. I know for within all this, like I have to give it time, and I have to be willing to give it time, and giving it time is a sacrifice because I could work 13, 14 hours a day on my craft and on what I'm doing, but is that healthy, is that
Right.
holy, and is that what's ultimately best? So yeah, man, like people a lot of people go off after college and they go and get their like master's degree or their PhD, and I tell people, I'm like, well, this is like my master's degree. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
I feel like this has taught me so much, and it's kind of like what we talked about at camp about like putting yourself out there to let people see you and know you. Like something changes when you put yourself out there, and there's a lot of learning that happens when you do that. And it is scary and it is terrifying, and you will lose friends and you will lose followers and whatever else. And but like if this is the thing that you feel like God has called you to do, and it aligns with what like the scriptures say, like is put it down, let's go.
How did you So like you mentioned that like you do this full time, and then you didn't do it, and then you just mentioned there may come a time where you're not able to do this full time. So what I want to know, how did you find out that you could do this full time? Because like you were working in Texas as
Right.
a, what would you say, as a missionary? I mean,
Yeah, so it was I was sent I worked at a church plant, and the way that it kind of worked within our church body was there was a district down there, and they said, "Hey, we want to bring you in, and then we're going to send you to this one location." And
mhm,
so I worked at a church, Acts Church Lakeline. If you're looking for a church in Austin, Texas, or North Austin, go check it out. There's some wonderful people there. And they really, honestly, they really encouraged me to do this. They saw Written to Speak as an extension of the church. And the pastor there, my good friend Barrett, he poured into me and just like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for him. He really was a huge, he's a huge part of this still. Like I still bounce ideas off of him and throw things his way because I trust his voice and I just trust him. Well, I trust him with my life. But they were a huge encouragement as to like, hey, you can do this full time. And so I would write prayers for the church. I would share poetry. I would give messages, and so they kind of helped kickstart this and show me that I can do this full time. And then as things began to pick up, and I was able to like, okay, maybe there's a way that I could do this full time. And so when we moved from Austin to Nashville, my wife and I, because she's a huge part of this. Like I couldn't do this if it wasn't for her.
mhm,
We were like, let's bet on it. Let's see if we can make it work. And we knew that was going to take a lot, and there was going to be a lot of times where I had to be gone and be on the road. But we wanted to kind of see if this was it, because we did feel like this is what God was pointing us to, and we're still navigating that and figuring it out. And for now, it works. This might be my job until the end, but there might come a day where it's like, hey, like you can't be on the road as much
mhm.
anymore, so you should get a job here. And if that's what I have to do, like I'll do that. But like Written to Speak it's not going to be finished. Like it's just what I
Right.
do, and it's what I'll keep doing. But it might look different in the future, and that's something that I have to understand and wrestle with and see. And I think there's a lot for me to learn inside all of that. Because if that's one of those things where God's like, hey man, it's time to kind of move on from something, then I have to be ready and willing to do that. But for now, this is it.
Right. And I think in a very different context, I was like, when I was in high school, I thought about playing college football at Division III college,
Let's go. Yeah.
right. And I was passionate about football. I wanted to be a football coach and all that stuff. And I remember talking with someone, and they were like, you know what? If you're passionate about something, you will continue to do it even if you're not doing it. Like when I was talking to them about not playing football, they're like, if you're passionate about football, you will find a way to do football in some form or
Hmm.
fashion. And I think that that's huge when you're doing Written to Speak, or when you're creating something like a podcast or YouTube show or whatever it may be, music, that there may come a time where you're not able to pour into it as much as you would like, or as much as you think you should. But
Right.
when you're passionate about something, you're still going to want to do it. And that's what's huge, is
Hmm.
like when you go to work, you should want to work. It shouldn't be,
Yeah.
oh, here we go,
Hmm.
like time to work. So I don't know. I think that's some basically what you said is, when you're passionate about something, you're going to keep doing it. Like Written to Speak isn't just going to end because something happens, or it's time to maybe not be on tour as much. Like it's still going to continue. It just might look differently.
Right. And one of the things I think that's important to at least that I have learned, at least that I have seen, is even like visiting schools and churches and talking with kids who are in middle school and high school and in colleges, is we often want something where, and this was certainly true when I first started Written to Speak. Like I wanted to put one thing on the internet, go viral, and be like, I have my community of followers and people who want to know what I have to say and all this kind of stuff. We want things that are like instantly. Like if you create a
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel, like you want it to blow up. If you create a
Mm-hmm.
podcast, you want there to be listeners. Like that's just how it works, right? This, like I've been doing this for 7 years now, and the growth has been small over time, but there has still been growth over time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like we have to learn to give our dreams and our ideas and our passions time so that they can kind of grow to be what it is that they need to become. And we also have to give ourselves time to grow. Like if I have posted something like 7 years ago, like a poem, and it goes viral or whatever, like I would not know how to handle that. I would have handled it terribly. I would
Mm-hmm.
have made mistakes. I would have grown in just foolish ways. And now, like if something like that were to happen, I'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to keep tomorrow. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to keep creating. I'm going to keep writing because I understand it's not about growing big, but it's about staying faithful to the things that you've been called to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, well, I'm gonna walk that path for as long as I can, because you never know like what it is that you're going to say that's going to help somebody, because that's ultimately, that's the main hope, is that you help.
Right. And especially when you're putting things out there, hopefully you don't just put it out there because you
Mm-hmm.
are being selfish about it, and you have the need of, oh, I need to put this out there so people will follow me and watch and listen and do all this stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, that is certainly okay to be part of it, but
Right.
I, when you're doing something meaningful like written to speak, and hopefully like for These Are My Thoughts is it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, hopefully it's making you think, it's helping you where you need help, or maybe it's helping you in a way that you would never thought it would, because
Mm-hmm.
that's important. There's too much content out there that's literally just content for content's sake.
No, it's garbage. Yeah. So, anyways, here's my skincare routine.
Right. Oh my. Uh, but like, as written to speak, so you've written a book,
Yeah.
and so was that always something that you like, once you started writing for written to speak and put out that first EP, was that something that was on the horizon, or is that something that just kind of like someone told you, hey, you should write a book, and you're like, yeah, I should, or how did that come about? What's the process like?
The process is painful. So I'll say this: I have 3 books on my desktop right now that are done.
Wow.
I mean, that's my job. My job is to write. I should
Right.
have 3 books, right? Like that's the thing. Like I should have, you should work to the thing, right? So I have a book, like a memoir. That was the thing that I wanted to write. I wanted to write something, and that I wanted that to be the book that came out first. But like it's not the right time. Like I know in my, as hippie as this sounds, I know in my spirit it is not the right time for this book to be released. But it's on there. Like that's the book that I wanted to write. And I can remember working at camp and waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and sitting down to write this book, right? Just write and write and write. And I have that book, but throughout all of it, I started writing more and more poetry, and just found a lot of peace in that, and found a lot of ways to connect with people in that. And so I have 3 books of poetry that one is out and 2 are ready to go. So if you're a publisher and you're listening, what's up? But so I did release the first book through an awesome group called Sword and Swan. So if you are looking to release a book, they are a great help, a great publisher to kind of push things through. So check out Sword and Swan. But they took a risk on me, and so I was the first book that they released, and this was the first book that I released, and it was called, it's called I'm All Over the Place. It's a book of poems, prayers, and wonderings, and so there's about 60 poems in there, and that book was really written over 6 years. Like those were the poems where I wrote them, and I was like, oh, these are great, and so some of them are great to me, I thought. So some of the people might be garbage, but whatever, this is your life. So I released a lot of those on, like you can listen to many of them on Spotify and iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So they've been previously have been released, and then some of the other ones were just brand new, shorter type thoughts. And so right now I'm working on a second book of much shorter poems, kind of like snippets, and because I think there's just something powerful that happens when we stop looking at screens and we open up a book and we just read 20 words and we sit with them for a little bit. I mean, we can do this with scripture. We can meditate or wonder through those words. But I think something happens when we just like sit and rest and be. And I think we need more of that in our lives. I know that I need more of that in my life. And so I hope that this next book that comes out, whenever it does, will be a helpful tool for people to kind of sit through and listen to kind of what's going on.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, but the process of writing a book, it's it's a lot, because it is it's like 3 steps forward and then 12 back, and you're like, okay, well, I'm never going to get there. But it's one of those things where you have to invite a lot of people into your work and to let them critique it and criticize it, and offer suggestions and changes. And that's not something that I enjoy. But I've never really met anybody who's like, you know what I want? I want feedback. Like no, no one like wakes up and is like, I really want to be criticized today. You want to go through your life and you want people to be like, you're doing great. How do you do it? But that's not the case with writing a book. But when you invite more people into things, that usually you create a better product.
There's so much that can be criticized and that has been criticized, and writing a book, like you said, oh, I can't imagine, because you have to send that to editors and publishers, and you probably have other people that aren't those two reading it
Yep.
to give you your feedback, especially for like your book. I'm all over the place is very personal in a lot of the poems,
Hmm.
and that can't be easy where someone's like, oh, actually, like that shouldn't go there,
Yeah.
or maybe you should take that out. And it's like, oh, but like that was important to me,
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
oh.
Yeah, it's like having surgery, man. It's
Well,
on. This is going to be
yeah.
it's gonna sound rough, but it's like standing in front of a group of people naked and saying, "All right, what do you think?" And it's never good. Like it's just never. It's never good. And so it was a hard process. It was a long process, but like that's kind of like what it means to be creative, and that's what kind of like let's like if we're gonna actually do this life together and invite people into it, like there's going to be some feedback and pushback, and you're going to be taken in different directions, and that's for the most part, hopefully, it's a good thing. And so I'm really pleased with how the book turned out, and it's taken me a long
Hmm.
time to be able to say I'm proud of something that I've done. Because I think maybe a little bit like you, I usually come in from a negative standpoint.
Right.
Well, this could be better, um,
Hmm.
but it turned out, and I'm honored, and I'm thankful. And it's crazy when people like say, "Hey, I bought your book." Like you did, and I used to want to be like, "I'm sorry," but then I learned that's not good marketing. Um, but and it's been cool when people like tag pictures of it and say, "I'm reading your book in Italy." Oh, that's wild. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
It's been really a really cool process, and a very humbling process as well.
When you went on tour, was that because you wrote the book, or did you decide to do that before you had it written and finished?
A little bit of both. I've always enjoyed getting up and sharing poetry. I think it can be a fun thing when you have the right group of people who are open to doing something a little bit different. Because I try to tell people, well, it's like a concert, but there's no music. It's like a
Mm.
rap concert, but there's no beat. Like, well, that sounds awful. But like so I did a couple of test shows just to see if it would work, and it did. It was a lot of fun of just sharing poetry and telling stories and talking about a few more serious things than I'm used to doing. But the response has been great. But it all kind of started because I released the book, and it's fun to be able to go and to share, hey, this is the book, this is what it is, and if you'd like to pick up a copy, you're more than welcome to in exchange for money. But like, so the kind of morphed into that. So right, I wrote the book, and I was like, let's go on tour, and see what happens. And since this is the very beginning of all of this, I needed to see if this worked. Kind of like you with the podcast. Like you have to do a couple of
Hmm.
interviews to be like, can I do this? Does this
Hmm.
work? And it's not like, can I just do it? Like you can do the podcast. Like you're a great interviewer. You know how to talk to human beings. But then it's also all the other things on top of that too. So for like touring, it's like, can I be away from home? Can I sleep on couches? Can I drive 8 hours? Can I survive off of this and do this and fight all these different battles that are going on while being on the road by myself? And so it's like learning these things about yourself as you move forward.
I'll ask a two-parter. What has been the most rewarding experience of Written to Speak, or of going on tour and writing the book? And what has been the most awkward experience you've had?
Let me start with the awkward ones because those are on my head right now. There's two that come to mind. One was after I finished doing a show. And so when I'm doing a show, if you haven't been to one yet, or if you'd like for me to come to your church, school, or organization, more than happy to go. But well, I was doing a show, and so I had my book up there, and I would share a couple of poems out of it. And then afterwards, this lady came up to me, and she was like, "Who wrote that book? It's really good." And I told her, I was like, "Oh, this is my book." And the look on her face was just like, "Oh, okay." Like she was disappointed that I had written it. She thought it was somebody else. And that was kind of an interesting moment. A couple of weeks ago, I was introduced like this place. I won't say where. They brought me in to do a night of poetry and storytelling, and I was introduced as Tanner Logan. A
Your
mess.
middle name's not Logan.
That's not my name at
No,
all. Like not even.
no, not
No.
even close.
In the first poem that I share, I do have a line that says, "In most days, I'm called the wrong name," which is very true.
Mm.
Like most
Hmm.
days, I get called like Tyler or Trevor or Connor or Tanner Logan. So So those were like it's just some weird stuff that happens, man. But honestly, like that doesn't really bother me. If anything, I just think it's hilarious. But I would not be doing this, and I wouldn't keep trying to do this, and I wouldn't try to get my foot in the door at places if it wasn't for the things that people have spoken and said to me. If it wasn't for the messages that I've received on Facebook and Instagram and all those places, but it's crazy that the things that I have written and the things that I have shared that people like they connect with it
Mm-hmm.
and it brings them hope and it encourages them to keep going and to keep moving forward. I can't. I mean, there've been a couple of instances where people have come up to me after shows and been like, "Hey, like I was gonna kill myself, and then I started reading your book," or like I like had written the suicide letter, but like I found your Instagram feed and I just decided to stay for a little bit longer. And so it's like things like this where I'm like, "Oh, that's real."
Mm-hmm.
And I understand like it's that's like the Holy Spirit is working throughout all of this, and He is working, and I am just writing things and hoping that the words that I write and the things that I say and the things that I post can help somebody or can help them stay a little bit longer or to remind them that hope is real and that you are forgiven and you are free and we are 100% allowed to live into that and to live out of that. And so it's difficult for me to get up night after night and to share the things that I've written and to put myself in front of a microphone because I don't want people to be like, well, he's just doing this for himself. I mean, you know exactly what it feels like to feel like people are being like, well, you're just doing that for
Mm-hmm.
attention or you're just doing that to
Mm-hmm.
get famous. It's like maybe like, yeah, I want attention. I want people to know who I am, but I want attention and I want people to know who I am so I can tell them that hope is real. So I can
Right.
tell them that they aren't alone. So that I can tell them that like it's gonna be okay. Or that I can tell them that we're all wrestling with a lot of things and we all don't have to have it figured out, but we can kind of go together. We can go together. And so that's really why that's why I do what I do. It's to to spread hope and to encourage people to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Which is a hugely important to remind people that, yeah, life is not easy, but it's
Hmm.
not easy for others too. And we can share those things with each other and we can move forward, hopefully together.
Yeah.
And I think that together part is what's important and what I think you have done a good job of cultivating with your community of followers and people that you share with is it's not, oh, Tanner comes and speaks and now it's your job. Like, no, you can continue to interact. We can do
Yeah.
this together. It's not just you trying to get famous. Like, that's not the overall intent. Like, you're trying, the way I look at it is you're trying to get famous in the sense of you're trying to lead people to something that's greater, and that is
Right.
either the Lord or hope.
Mhm.
One of the two. Doesn't,
Yeah.
like for people that might not believe in God, like it's hope. That, like, hope is a universal thing that we all need and that we all need to share
Right.
one way
Right.
or another. Yeah.
Right. No, that's exactly it, man. And there's a lot of wrestling that goes on with that and with like fighting to to believe in the thing that you're doing. And so it's like you need people around you to encourage you to keep going and to keep writing and for you to keep doing your podcast. One of the things I do love about going into schools and sharing at churches and stuff, especially so like when I go to churches now and I'm invited by like a youth group, I always encourage the church to be like, no, like make this a church-wide event, make this an event for the entire community and especially for your high school students and your middle school students because there are things that I want to say that will begin conversations in your home. Like I want to talk a little bit about mental health and I want to talk a little bit about struggling and the questions that I have and wrestling with my faith. And I think that when you have somebody who comes into a place, brings up a topic or a conversation, then it allows there for to be more conversation at home that will last longer. Like I don't know what it's like to be a parent or to be an adult, but I can imagine it's a lot easier to talk about mental health and it's a lot easier to talk about God when you can start a conversation with
Hmm.
so that guy on stage last night. What did you think about when he said that? I
Hmm.
feel like that's a little bit easier of a conversation to begin than out of nowhere being like, we need to talk about whatever, you know?
Hmm.
And so
Right.
in some ways or another, I kind of see myself like being somebody who just kind of throws themselves out there so that other people can kind of have the conversations that they know they need to have in their own house.
Sharing things together is super important for any, like, whatever walk of life you're in, or whatever creed you're a part of, whatever, you shouldn't go through it alone. And I think that you, again, do a wonderful job of doing that and encouraging people to not do that. I don't know. I think, like, personally, that's a big deal to me. And I'm trying not to make this just about me, but I think that is a huge deal.
Oh yeah.
Sharing things is something that I was not good at, like going back to camp, something I was not good at and I
Hmm.
did not want to do or participate in. And then it was like, oh no, like, guess what? Being in relationships with people, whether it's my wife or with my friends or with my coworkers or with the people around me, means you have to share at least a little bit of yourself.
Right.
And you need to ask questions of people and do all these things is super important. So,
And oftentimes the hard thing is probably the right thing.
ooh, that's deep. Tanner Olson, king of deep thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
That'll be on Instagram someday. Oh, no,
New profile, new profile. Who are you? King of Deep Thoughts. Yeah.
do you have any questions for me? I like to let people throw out questions if they have them, so it's not just me. Like, that's something that I always hated in interviews is
Yeah.
people bombard you with questions, and then it's like, oh yeah, like I want to know a little bit more about this, but I don't think I can ask it. So I want people to ask me questions if they have any, and if you don't, that's fine. I'll edit it out.
I have a lot of questions for you. Question number one, how dare you? um, okay, so you started a podcast. Is this where did this all kind of come out of?
It came out of wanting to be creative. Like, I was struggling without a hobby that was productive. Like reading and stuff is productive, but that's not something I always do. And so it was like, well, I could convince my wife to get me a PlayStation or whatever, and I could play video games as my hobby on my day off. It's like, oh, that's not productive or beneficial or anything like that. And then part of it stems from feeling like I am a creative type and I can be funny and I can contribute something. And I have interesting friends and interesting and funny stories. And just kind of like, I've never really put myself out there other than maybe like Mr. Concordia, and that was years ago now, like at
Hmm.
least 3 or 4 years ago. And so it's like, well, let's do this. I think it sounds like sometimes when I say it, it sounds like I'm just doing it to do it, but that's not true. Like, I want to contribute something. I want people to be able to relax. Like, that is something that I struggle with. And that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with. And so part
Right.
of this is to help people relax. Like, hopefully they can tune into an episode and laugh about a story. So it's sharing stories and conversations and talking honestly, and also trying to make people think. Like, this episode, I think, will really help people think. I think that my episode with Dr. Oberdeck will really help people think about their mental health.
Hmm.
But also just being able to let people relax. Like, a lot of episodes are shorter than your average podcast, and the intent is, yeah, so that it's short, so it's succinct, so it's funny. And I
Hmm.
think that I'm funny, and if you don't think I'm funny, hopefully you can at least laugh at me. Like, I've gotten much better at people laughing at me and criticizing me. I'm not great at it, but
Right.
at least now they have a reason to. Like, it's like when I asked my wife to marry, or not to marry me, but to date me. I did it awkwardly on purpose so she could either say yes or laugh at me.
Well, and I want to tell you, like, I think that you're doing something. I think first of all, I think you're good at podcasting, which is a weird thing to be like
Thank you.
a skill, like, but it is a skill. Like, you're good at
Hmm.
hosting a conversation and talking with people, and also you're brave to do it because you're opening. Not only are you opening up yourself, but you're opening up like the response from other people to draw criticism. And I think
Hmm.
that's when a lot of people want to shut down their creativity. And like, to sharing does not mean that you're being creative. Like, you can just be creative to be creative, and that can be an outlet. But like, then to be
Hmm.
able to share those things, I think it takes a lot of trust, it takes a lot of faith, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. So like, if this podcast never like blows up the way that you want it to, like, you're still adding something really really good to your community of people. Like, and that's the thing that I have to think about often is like being faithful to the people that are around you, and to share with them the thing that you think will help them navigate this life, or give them a little bit of room to breathe and to be and to rest. Because I think that's one of the best kinds of podcasts. Is like, they're somebody who's listening to this right now, and I hope that they feel like they're just kind of sitting at the table with us talking.
Hmm.
You
Right.
know? So I think you're doing that, man, and I think you
Thank
should keep
you.
doing it. So,
I
and
appreciate it.
as somebody who has started a podcast before and got 10 episodes in and then was like, oh, got to do that again. Uh, it's hard to keep it going. So just take
Hmm.
your time. take your time with it and just kind of keep plugging away, and you're doing good stuff.
I appreciate it. Do you have any other questions?
I know we've recorded for like a little over an hour, so the whole shorter podcast thing, not going to happen on this one.
Hey, that's okay.
Okay. Would you rather eat pizza for the rest of your life or tacos?
Tacos.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
think I'm there with you. Tacos. I like tacos too. I'm going with tacos. That's all the questions I have. I don't have any more. I know you.
Tanner, where can people ask you to come to their church or school or business to speak?
If you visit writtentospeak.com or send me a message at writtentospeak@gmail.com, I would love to talk to you more about what that looks like. And I might actually even be coming to where you currently are. So I have a bunch of things lined up for the future. So, but yeah, I would love to come do a show of poetry and stories, or teach poetry in your classroom, or share poetry at a lunchtime at your business. Just really, I do mostly everything but birthday parties. So
no birthday parties.
nah, for sure no. This was the worst birthday party ever. I thought you said you didn't want a clown.
Where can people follow you, like on social media? Where are some social media things you're at, and where do you post content and things like that?
I am everywhere but Snapchat and TikTok, because no. But if you want to follow on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, just type in Written to Speak and I should come up. I post short little poems every day, a couple times a day. So if you need a little bit of encouragement, you can go there. If you want to check out my website too, just check out writtentospeak.com. I've got blogs and videos and a bunch of merch up for sale. So if you want like a sweatshirt or stickers and all those kinds of things, check that out. I'm always adding stuff to it. So once again, this is my job.
Right, and you're also on Spotify and on YouTube, so you can search Written to Speak on those as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm yes, I try to be everywhere on the internet except for TikTok and Snapchat.
As you should be. Mm-hmm. Nice, very nice. Well, Tanner, thank you so much for being on. The last question I have is, do you have one recommendation for the people listening?
My recommendation is don't be afraid to spend time in just the silence. Just to be able to sit and to be and to spend time without watching something or holding your phone or looking at it. Just like, let's just try to remember what it's like to just sit and to be and to breathe. That's my recommendation.
Thank you so much, Tanner, for being on and for sharing and for what you do with Written to Speak. I appreciate it, and I think that the other people that tune into what you have will appreciate it too, and will find something. There's something for everyone with what you write and what you put out there, which I think is awesome.
Cool. Appreciate that, man. Really do.
Yeah. So thank you. And thanks for the listeners for liking, commenting, and subscribing. You can follow me on Twitter at BlakeBrockman33. Until next time, these are Tanner and I's thoughts, and we'll see you soon.
See ya.